Okay, perfect. And with this said, I think we can start today our 14th Bitcoin Block web meeting this year, and also the last Bitcoin Block web meeting in the year 2020. But I think no one would have thought when we started this web series half a year, a little bit more than half a year ago, that it would actually be 14 web meetings in total this year, and that this would develop into quite a good web meeting series, which we are planning to obviously continuing next year, and also, I mean, in the best case, also even develop and further grow next year. So for those who are not yet familiar with Bitcoin Block, those are short web meetings where our Bitcoin Block or Bitcoin blockchain working group meets normally every 2 or 3 weeks and discusses one specific blockchain related topic. We have normally 1 or 2 experts, guests presenting. And today's meeting will be about R3, the DLT technology Corda Enterprise. And as one of, I would say, the most famous and the most productive solutions of this technology, we will have a look at the DLT project Spunta within the Italian bank consortium. And we are very lucky to have Francisco Spadafora, who is head of blockchain service line at Entity Data Italy, presenting today's topic. And maybe very briefly, before I hand over to Francisco, just a quick overview of who is part of Bitkom for those who are not yet familiar. This is a selection of our active member companies. So obviously, just a quick second, I will. So I just quickly muted everyone. Yeah, this is a quick overview of our active member companies. We are very strong, as you can see, in the tech and in the finance industries. Obviously, Entity Data is also one of our major and most active member companies, with Benjamin, who's also here part of the web meeting, heading our blockchain working group since actually the beginning, since we started this working group from scratch 3 or 4 years ago already. And I mean, we achieved and elaborated quite a lot this year, from a lot of different white paper publications on blockchain related innovations and topics, to several political consultations and position papers we drafted together with our member companies. And we are very proud of calling ourselves nowadays the largest and the most active blockchain and crypto network and platform in Germany. We will, I think, at the latest next week or at the beginning of 2021, also publish an overview of all the publications, all the events and web meetings we accomplished this year. You can check that out, obviously, online in our website, or also in the Bitcoin Block working group in our member portal. So with this said, I don't know, I think we can directly jump into today's topic, unless Benjamin, do you want to say anything before we start, or should we directly jump in?
I think we can directly jump in. Just for you, an information, Francisco is, I think, the most knowledgeable person about this project. So don't hesitate, ask questions. You won't get a better conversation partner for this.
Perfect. So with that said, Francisco, I hand over to you, and thanks again for your time and expertise. I think we are all very much looking forward to your insights, and then obviously also to an open, as always, an open and fruitful Q&A and discussion session afterwards.
Perfect. So thank you very much for inviting me to share this information to all of you. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Patrick. It's a pleasure for me to share with you what we have done. Spunta Project, it's the first project worldwide for a whole banking ecosystem, the Italian one. adopting a DLT solution. So it's a really big thing. If we look to blockchain projects today in DLT projects in the world, especially for private ecosystems, this is the biggest one. So that makes us really proud. You can see my presentation, right? Can you confirm that?
Yes.
Perfect. Just to give you an overview of who participated to this project. So the regulators and the associations were ABI, the Italian Banking Association, and ABI Lab, it is the research laboratory of the Italian Banking Association. As entity data, we were the IT integrator, and especially our focus was on the application and the design of the infrastructure. So we supported end-to-end from the identifying the use case till development, and then moving in production all the application and the ecosystem. From infrastructure point of view, the Italian banks didn't use cloud, so we didn't use AWS or Azure. We used CIA, that it is a private infrastructure that it's able to host the machines and the nodes also on premise. So they provided the infrastructure, and they are supporting also the banks because CIA is providing a private physical network connecting the banks. So the project is not on internet; it's in a private blockchain, like if it is a private LAN between all the banks. So that's for security reasons really important for the banks. And the platform is Corda from R3. As I say, this is a big project, and we have in this moment 98 banks in production. That means that we have 98 nodes working in this moment with real data connected between each other. That's really huge if we think that this is a private ecosystem. And these 98 banks represents the 95% of the Italian market. So we almost have all the customers and the banks. Here I show you the roadmap of the project, just to give you an idea of the journey we had. So we started in June 2017 doing a feasibility study of the process, and I will show you later the process. So identifying if the process was able to be migrated on blockchain or not, which was the process design, the architecture, identifying the right platform, because as entity data, we work with all the blockchain platforms. So we work with Corda, with Hyperledger Fabric, with Bitcoin, Ethereum. So we work with all these platforms. So, but we had to identify the best one for this project. So we did also a technology scouting, and at the end, we choose Corda with the banks. Of course, we decided all together, comparing the different platforms, and the feasibility study was okay. So it was possible to move in a second phase. That was the POC. In 6 months, we developed a POC, functional requirements. We designed the application from UX, UI, blockchain point of view. We developed the application and tested with the banks. In the POC phase, we had 14 banks. And then we, after we finished the UAT test with the banks, they say, perfect, we want to move in production. They say, what's the gap? Well, the gap in that period was 1.5 years of project doing performance tests, because we knew that the final volumes were really high. We were talking about 200 million transactions. We needed to create a new regulation, a new standardization. We needed to create a production-ready infrastructure. When I say production-ready, is because we have high availability, disaster recovery, we have SLAs for all the services we are providing, we have backups, we have archiving features. So lot of functionalities that, and especially non-functional requirements, the security, so all the security assessments, GDPR compliance, etc., etc., etc. So hundreds of things that we had to solve in that 1 year and a half before moving in production. This was the first project doing something like that, so we had to let me say, create everything from scratch. There was not experience before us, so that was a really big challenge for us. And after that, so in December 2019, we finished the pre-production phase. We had the green light to move in production. And on 1st March, so in the middle of the COVID, we moved in production the first wave of banks, 32 banks. Second wave of banks were migrated on 1st May, and the last wave on 1st October. And that's why today we have 98 banks in production. In the middle of the second wave and third wave, we also migrated to Corda, the last version of Corda, version 4.4.3. So we also updated the banks in production. Just to give you an idea, in this moment, we have in production something like 170 millions of transactions, close to 6-7 terabytes of data. So a huge amount of transactions and data on top of this application. Let me just introduce a little bit the use case we migrated. The banks, they have to do interbank reconciliation between each other. That means that they send movements between each other, and they have at the end to do a reconciliation, both for digitalized and non-digitalized products, because it is not only, let me say, credit cards and things like this, but there are also non-digitalized products that they are doing reconciliation, commercial paper, promissory notes, etc., etc. So all this reconciliation, so they have, let me say, 2 databases that they have to do a reconciliation. That was before this project, everything in a bilateral way, totally not standardized. Some banks were doing reconciliation monthly, some daily, etc. Some using FTP, someone using email, someone using API. So it was really, really a mess between all the banks, and our work was to create a standard between them, and especially creating also an infrastructure that enables the banks to create also other projects, so not just Spunta. This process is regulated by the Italian Banking Association, so it's not regulated by the European Central Bank or by the Bank of Italy. So we had the possibility to have also the regulator in the project, that is the Italian Banking Association. So that was a huge, big thing for us. Which were the main benefits of the project, and what were the advantages that they expected. The first one was reducing the operational risk. This because, as you can imagine, if you do reconciliation monthly, you have 1 month waiting and you don't know what happened in that month. No, so you will learn what happened and understand what happened after 1 month, and that's a big risk. Banks between them are moving billions of euros monthly. So that's moving the reconciliation from monthly to daily, as we are doing now. That reduce a lot of operational risk. Increasing the quality of the checks and the reconciliation, because now we have a standardized process between them, with common matching rules, with common way to store the data in the databases, with a common infrastructure. So that's an improvement from quality of the matches. as well as of transparency. Using a blockchain DLT solution provides them the possibility to see the same ledger between them. So that's a transparency thing. So as soon as one bank put an information, also the counterparty see what they uploaded, and in this way they can do daily checks about what's happening on top of the ledger. Also from review activities, and this comes from especially from the regulators, that they check how the project, the reconciliation is going, and they ask reports, etc., etc. They have everything simplified because we produce reports and dashboards, and that's totally available immediately. As I say, daily workflow, so they are doing daily reconciliation, they can do daily checks, so everything was migrated to a daily situation. And the other thing is a user-friendly interface. So in the hundred of systems they were using, of course, we talk about systems that had 20 years old, so they were using a UX really old. So we also we were able to improve also the UX experience. Here you can see some screenshot about the application, about the dashboards, the movements that you can see matched, and some other details. Here you can see also the comparison between the situation they had and the situation they have now. I said before, so maybe I can jump this, but process simplified, daily basis reconciliation, common rules to do matching, real-time management of the process, standardization, full visibility, same platform to integrate, etc. So from another point of view, one of the big challenges of moving a project like this in production, so with 98 banks, is creating a governance model. So when we talk about private blockchains, we need to consider that we need a governance model. Public blockchains like Bitcoin, Ethereum, they try to put everything in the code. So the code is the law, and you don't need contracts, you don't need anything. You know, there are the miners, the developers, the who host the nodes, and that's the ecosystem, and the rules are in the code. In a private blockchain, you can put a lot of the rules in the code, but you will need also a governance model. So, for example, you need the business network that are the participants to the network, in this case, the banks. You need someone managing the network, so who can join, who cannot join, how they can join to the network, and this is ABI Lab. You need a business network designer, designing the applications and the infrastructure, and that's entity data. You need someone providing and supporting also in the operational model. So in that case, is ICIA, providing both the machines and the application maintenance of the infrastructure and in the production environment. And the last thing is having R3 and Corda from platform point of view. So you need to create this governance model. Behind this governance model, there are several contracts between all these stakeholders, so between the banks and ABI Lab, between ABI Lab and entity SIA R3, between entity data and R3, between SIA and R3. So there are several partnership contracts managing all the governance model. Of course, stop me if you have questions and something is not clear, and confirm me that everything is working well now. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, perfect. So why Corda? So that's a really good question. A lot of architects ask why Corda. Of course, when we talk about a private ecosystem, banks in this moment are still not that familiar with public blockchains, even if there are some of them that they are including public blockchains, Bitcoin and Ethereum and some other assets, crypto assets in their portfolio. But let me say there are these two worlds. So public blockchains and private blockchains are trying to, like to merge in some way. So the public blockchains are creating the side chains, and the private blockchains are trying to create big networks of nodes. So let me say that the technology is moving, and I think at one point they will meet, as it happened, and as this happened in a lot of other cases. If you think about Microsoft and Mac OS, that they started doing a really like a technological war, like Office not working in one, etc., etc. Office working just in Windows, and but now if we look now, there are almost in some way integrated. The applications are both in the both operating systems. The approach is totally different, but if we look from a user point of view, at the end we see two different approaches, but in some way interoperable. The same thing we see from public and private blockchains. They are moving to create in some way an interoperability. We are still not there, but they are moving. So answering to Corda, why Corda? So because first of all, it's a permissioned network. So private ecosystems like this one, they wanted to have all the control on the blockchain. The other one was the possibility to share information in a need to know approach. That means that the information is not shared with everyone, it's shared only with the participants. So the transactions are shared only with who is involved in that transaction. So it's not shared with everyone. That means that you avoid privacy problems, because having everything, all the informations, it's a privacy problem. And also you avoid to have performance problems, because if everything has to host everything, the space needed, it's really, really big. If we look to how Corda is organized, so in March we moved in production on version 3.3, and then, as I said, in October we migrated to version 4.4. Corda is organized in the nodes, that in this case are the banks. There is one notary or more than one notary. That the notary is a lot of people thinks that the notary makes this kind of blockchains totally centralized. To be honest, a private blockchain, of course, is not a totally decentralized blockchain. So we cannot compare with Bitcoin, we cannot compare with Ethereum, and that's one of the biggest mistakes that technical people, I think, do, trying to compare Corda with Bitcoin. That's not possible, or comparing Hyperledger Fabric with Ethereum or Bitcoin. When we talk about private blockchains, we are talking about a common infrastructure that reduce the power of a central actor or central stakeholder, but don't delete the central stakeholder, but reduce the power, the information that the central stakeholder knows, and reduce so these kind of things. And that's reduce also the power of the infrastructure, because if I think about this project, the nodes are owned by the banks, so are not owned by the association. So the association, the only thing that its owner, the association has its own role, like in the governor, deciding who can join and who cannot join, and is providing the notary service. The notary service, the only thing that it does is avoid double spending. So it just check that you are not doing double spending, and the notary does this without checking the content of the transaction. So even if the notary is a central service, It cannot see the content of the transactions. It can just avoid double spending. The notary cannot create transactions. So that's an important thing. So notary service and then the network map. The network map is just a DNS mapping the IP with the name of the bank, and the permission service or doorman is the certificate authority providing so the certificates to be able to operate in the network. So notary, network map, and permission services are all services provided by the association, so but by the ABI. And as I said, even if these are centralized services, they cannot change data, they cannot introduce different kind of data, they cannot in some way modify what's happening between the network, because the nodes are owned by the banks. There are some other services that we are not using in this project, like the oracles or the observers, but maybe in some other projects we will put. But that's in how we are using Corda today. As well, from the other side, it's about how the business network works. You have, of course, all the notary and the different stakeholders and the different nodes, all in a business network. In this case, it's the Spunta business network. The same thing is possible to do with another subset, for example, of nodes with another use case. You can choose or the same notary or another notary, select a number of nodes in the network, for example, from the 9820, and develop their own application. They can do using the same infrastructure. They can do this using the same, for example, notary. They can use the same doorman. So they just only have to think about the application, and that's a good thing. Of course, the ABILAB chain, who are the nodes, is the ABILAB chain is a subset of the SIA chain. SIA chain includes also other companies, not only banks, telco, from the government. So the best thing about this is that tomorrow we will be able to do projects between the 98 banks and the government and a telco and a retail. So all this network is interoperable also with other nodes, also outside Italy. So that's a really good thing. Let me share with you which are the key success points from our side. So why this project moved in production. If we look, and I think Gartner, when the several meetings we have with Gartner analysts and many other ones, their statistics says that 95% of the projects of the blockchain projects failed. So they stopped it in POC phase. So only 5% of the projects moved in production. So from our side, what we see is that the reason why we move it in production is, first of all, because we had a multi-blockchain approach. So we started analyzing all the blockchains and we choose which was the best one. Some other projects, they say, no, I want to use Ethereum, and then at the end they identify that they understand that Ethereum was not the right choice. So we think that first comparing the blockchains is important. Having a fast demo prototype development. So we tested, we did a prototype for them to show the capabilities of the blockchain, and that was really key for us. As I said, end-to-end support. So as entity data, we supported from the advisory to the delivery of all the project. Having passionate and young people in the blockchain team we have, that's really important. Today, it's quite hard to find a blockchain expert. Now, maybe it's easier, but when we started in 2017, it was like impossible. So having really young, passionate people about innovative technologies was key for us to create the team and to be able so to have and create all the know-how. Having R&D references and projects. We as Entity Data, we are investing a lot of billions of euros or dollars in R&D. And when we started the project in 2017, we already had blockchain references, and that was really key for us. Flexible methodology and agile approach. There are hundreds of things that changed in our roadmap. So agile approach, flexible approach was key to manage the project. So this is not a waterfall project and cannot be like that. Partners with the customer, so we worked with them as partner, as a technical partners. The other thing is having the right actors in the project. Typically, another reason why project fails is because someone is missing, someone key is missing. So we had the regulators, the bank's infrastructure, the system integrator, the banks, and the platform. Having a joint requirement analysis between banks, ABI Lab, and Entity Data, that was also really, really important. UX design with the bank's operators, so we collaborated with them also to identify the best UX design, also having 2 UAT sessions with all the banks, so testing the application. And last but not least, that this project is regulatory mandatory. So the banks must migrate on blockchain and is not an option. So that was key. So I stop here with the presentation. Of course, if you have questions and curiosity, I'm here to answer.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Francisco, for those insights into the Spunta project and into the Corda blockchain DLT platform and how you use it. As always, in our Bitcoin Block web meetings, we would now move on to the open part, to the open discussion and Q&A session. So to all participants here in this meeting, feel free to start asking questions or making comments on what Francisco just presented.
Everybody is kind of shy today, huh? Might be the English. So if you, wenn Sie Ihre Fragen auf Deutsch stellen wollen, wir können auch gerne übersetzen. I think one of the main things you mentioned is realizing that private blockchains are something completely different from the things that we do with public blockchains. I think that's one of the key realizations and where a lot of explaining blockchain falls short, that you have to have a completely different perspective and you need to include the use case you are working on. So the Spunta use case just would not translate easily to a public blockchain setup. It would have needed that the complete banking infrastructure, complete banking landscape changes as in one step. And I think that's one thing we need to realize between all of the discussions that we're currently doing, that we really carefully have to look at what you're doing. Most of the private blockchain initiatives by design are not suitable for a public setup yet, because not everybody is able to or wants to go full in already. I think that's a matter of time.
Yeah, I think there are 3 things. So the first one is public blockchains aims to create a decentralized ecosystem to share assets. possibly with the smart contracts, so in some way programmable, with some programmability, in a totally decentralized way. Of course, also public blockchain, they have some centralized points, because if we think the developers, if there are 20 developers, that's centralized on 20 developers. If there are 100 miners, that's centralized on 100 miners, etc. So they also have some centralized points. But of course, as I said, everything is trying to reduce the centralized points. Also, for example, Bitcoin is centralized from hardware point of view, because there is just one big hardware manufacturer of the mining machines. So as I said, everything is in some way centralized. It depends of the needs. From Bitcoin and Ethereum, of course, as I said, sharing assets, cryptocurrencies in a decentralized way without the authorization of anyone, that's their use case. That's perfect. I love it. I started in 2017 and I support public blockchains. If we look to what private blockchains and DLT aims to do, is totally different to that. So private blockchains, they will not create something totally decentralized. They will not create something that competes also with the public blockchains, because the use case and the final purpose is totally different. From my point of view and the experience we have now, a private blockchain or DLT is an infrastructure connecting as stakeholders, a common infrastructure connecting stakeholders in a decentralized way, but with some centralized points. In that case, as I said, who release the certificates and who avoid the double spend, but everything else is decentralized. And the final purpose is to create an infrastructure that is possible to and allows them to create multiple applications that can be applications for ecosystem. So totally different purpose. And the last thing that I always answer is to the public blockchain guys that say to me, but you can do that with a database and try. And that's not possible, because if you look, of course, you can do with a centralized database and, of course, the application level, because the centralized database is not enough. You need also the application level. But if you do everything in a centralized way, you will need, of course, that, for example, in this project, ABI has to host everything, all the infrastructure, everything in a centralized way. And banks don't want that, for example, in this project. And if we think about a distributed database, that's not enough also, because the database is not able to have business logic inside it. So you will need always an application level on top of the distributed database. And if you want to create a distributed database with also a distributed level of business logic, at the end you will have a private blockchain.
Yeah.
So that's, let me say, how I see these two worlds, that now that we work since 2016 we started. So that's from our experience.
What is very interesting for us as Bitkom, as I mean the largest, the leading digital trade association in Europe with 2,000 member companies, is that basically the ABI in your Spunta project has such a central role. Also, I mean, you mentioned it, there is some centrality in the sense that they are representing the doorman, that they decide in their governance model who enters and who not. And it's very interesting, since normally, at least here in Germany, I haven't seen or heard of any case where a trade association, no matter what kind of trade association, be it us as the digital industry association or the banking association, is really that closely involved in also the development and implementation of an IT project within a certain industry, which could be also very interesting further use case. I mean, for associations like ours, Benjamin, I don't know what you think about that, but I mean, our key selling point and key feature is that we already, englobe all those different actors. So we have some kind of neutrality feature and an asset we could use also in those kind of decentralized or at least distributed projects.
Yeah, yes. To be honest, the Italian Banking Association, before this project, they never had any infrastructure, and they still don't have infrastructure because, as I said, the only thing they have, of course, is the certificate authority and the notary, but everything else is not owned by the Italian Banking Association. So what they want is to reduce as much as possible the infrastructure they have to manage, and the main purpose was to move the infrastructure to the banks, and then, as I said, the nodes are of the banks. Why they started this project is because they understood that the best stakeholder and to organize projects like this is an association, because if you choose 3 banks, they will fight everything, but they did it, like you have the big one, the medium, and the small one, which is the money they have to put for the project, and they start fighting, which is the right contract to sign. So the big banks say, no, I want this thing. No, the little ones say, I want this other thing. You have to identify which are the features that you will put in the application or in the infrastructure. If something is missing, one bank will say, no, I want this. No, another one I want that. So if you want to create a project in a private ecosystem and create in some way the consensus, not only from technical point of view, but also in these kind of decisions, you need someone that does this all day. And that's the role of the associations. So that's why starting from the Italian Banking Association and their research laboratory, that was the perfect stakeholder starting a project. So I understand that it is not something that happened in the past. Typically, the associations, they were just doing research laboratory, answering to consultations, and they were really in their, like comfort zone. And doing projects like this is totally different from their comfort zone. But if they don't do this, it's hard to achieve the ecosystem level, moving everyone to a blockchain solution, and you will have different solutions. And this is what I see in other markets. I think also in Germany, you have 2 or 3 banks or companies that they have like some ecosystem, trying to create the ecosystem. I saw that also in some other countries. And that's why, because the associations are not pushing that much. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a key asset of ours, that we are neutral in a certain sense, and that we're already this large, and that we, I guess ABI is a more trusted player in that sense to manage the active governance of the Spunta project than any other private bank would have been. And as you already mentioned, all private DLT, even the bigger blockchain or DLT projects, be it in the logistics sector regarding the supply chain, or be it stable coins that are emerging, they're all trying to build. Then after they started the project, they are actively trying to build a governance model and an ecosystem model.
Because they need to,
around it.
The thing with the ABI project was that the ecosystem, from a business perspective, and the consortium that you need to run it, and all the governance processes were already in place. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges for those private DLTs, that a lot of them don't start with why. So why are we doing this, and what is going to be the benefit for all of the participants? For the case in Spunta, with Spunta, it was they didn't have really the choice. They were kind of forced into it, but also when looking at the project that's now running for some of the banks already for some time, they already have realized savings, and they already have realized the reduction of operation expenses and increase in turnover, reduced requirements for securities around those things. So basically, the things that you would need to concentrate on when building a consortium or when growing an ecosystem was already there, all in place. So they could concentrate on building a great solution. And I think that's the big challenge all of those private networks have, is how is this thing relevant on a global or European scale? And how good were we in finding network effects and finding benefits for everyone that we want to join, you know?
Yeah, just to give you an idea, another input. We are now working to propose to the European Central Bank the model and the 88 banks to do the experimentation of the digital euro, because who better than 98 banks that know how to do and work as an ecosystem to test, be involved in a project like the digital euro. We don't know if it will be based on blockchain or DLT, or they will do a centralized solution, but we can share our experience, and if they want to do in a DLT approach, we will be able to share the model, technical challenge, etc., etc. So that's and the reason why the Italian banks are now able to share this is because they started 3 years ago, even if at the beginning it was really a risk and a big challenge. They say we want to learn, and today they are ready to talk with central bank and the European Central Bank, and to say we have an experience, we have real use case in production, we are the biggest blockchain, private blockchain in Europe, maybe in the world. So that's a really great thing. And now we are working on digital. We are testing and doing digital euro on top of the Abilab chain. So the next use case is the digital euro, not because the European Central Bank will choose ours. We know that they will not choose our solution, but to show what a DLT solution and the digital euro can do.
Are there any further questions or remarks from any other participants here? Doesn't seem the case.
I would.
Yes.
Judith Meinke from Bundesdruckerei. Just one quick question. You just said that you, Francisco, you also said that you're working on the digital euro and you think that your solution would not be chosen. Can you elaborate on what you mean? What's the constraints? Is it because of this very particular situation that it's all a private solution right now and not available for, you know, interaction outside this private network?
Yeah, well, why I say that is not because we have a real feedback, but because as we know in this moment, there are several proposals from the several central banks. So Italy, France, and I don't know if also Germany, they are working on centralized solutions, and they are proposing centralized solution. One of the proposal is TIPS, that it is the actual infrastructure used by the wholesale CBDC, and they are proposing to move the wholesale CBDC TIPS infrastructure and to extend that, and also be able to manage retail CBDC. We know that other countries, I don't remember now if it is Lithuania or another one, it is developing a DLT solution. But the main thing we see is that typically, and in the past, the European Central Bank developed by themselves all the solutions. So they never bought a solution or a product from another company or central bank. So they are used to develop by themselves everything. But what we are trying to propose to Panetta and Lagarde, because our final purpose is to talk with them, and they will be involved in the project we are doing, is to show how a platform that already exists, an ecosystem that already exists, that we have 98 banks, and that can be, of course, increased to all the European banks and also other companies, how an example of how a digital euro can be developed on top of these kind of platforms. If that makes sense for them and they give us a really good feedback, what we expect is that maybe they ask us to support in the development of the European Central Bank platform more than buying or using what we develop. So we think they will like to create, let me say, not from scratch, but close to that. So we are proposing to support them on the development of their platform more than selling what we will develop. That's why I say that probably they will not choose our solution like their solution, but maybe they will pick and they choose some of the us to support them on the development.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Maybe just to come back to one final thing you mentioned, Francisco, you said that, I mean, the banks had no real choice since it was mandatory in a regulatory sense to join the network. Could you elaborate a little bit on that? And in what sense are they really forced into your Spunta network?
Well, till the pre-production phase, we had 18 banks that they decided to do all the POC and all the experiment phase. The 18 banks represented more or less the 80% of the market. So that was really big for us. So we could also move only the 18 banks and be happy because we moved the 80% of the market. But as I said, ABI is the regulator for this process. That means that ABI can create a regulation and say, this is the new standard and you must integrate. So of course, the ABI is an association of the banks. So even if they take a decision, they need always that the other banks agree, the banks of the association agree. So they proposed this to the banks in the executive board, and the executive board said yes, we want to move this from just a project of 18 banks to the whole banking system. Also because, and the key point is that they used foresight, because they say that today we are creating infrastructure that in the future we will use for many other use cases, and we need everyone on top. Also to justify the investment, because everyone invested on this infrastructure. So they say the only way to make sense to this investment is having the ecosystem. So the executive board, when they vote not only on moving Spunta project on a DLT, but also on asking to all the banks to host a node. And at the end, the executive board vote, and that was approved. And from when it was approved, they had several waves, and they still have some waves for the 5% of banks that are still not on board. They have several waves, and they can choose when they have to move in production. But at the end, they must move in production, and that's key, because otherwise, the blockchain, I think, will have 20, 30, maybe 50, but not all the 98 that we have now.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely an interesting learning, that it's not only business driven, but also politically driven. And yeah. I mean, especially also for us as association to see how vast the capacities of the banking association are in Italy is quite fascinating to see that they're actually actively also regulating, and that they're actively contributing to the governance of this IT systems. Could maybe in the future be an example also for German associations.
Yes, to be honest, this is one of the points I see a lot of projects stop, you know, like, because they create everything. They create application, they create ecosystem, everything. But when they have to move in production and, you know, like sign the contracts, everything stop, you know. And the power of an association to do escalations, to talk with the CEO, to push from association point of view, you know, saying to, for example, one bank, or you are the only one who is not signing the contract, why you are doing that, you know, like creating some kind of pressure or pressure on the different banks. That's the capability of an association. And that's why I say that in a project like this, and a key success point is having the right actors. Because as Entity Data, we are a technological company, business company, we support everything, but we have to be honest, we are not doing these kind of things. We are not able to manage these kind of relationships. So we need the support from someone who is able to do this. So that's one of the lessons learned, yeah, about the project. And we try to share with all the associations, because now we have a lot of associations that say, oh yeah, I want to replicate that model. Well, you know, it's not just asking us to do everything, you know, you will have to do a lot of things, otherwise we will fail. So yeah, it's a teamwork. It's not possible to do only with one company leading everything.
Okay, thanks, Francisco. Are there any final comments, thoughts? Otherwise, I would say it's 5 p.m., so perfectly on time. Thank you very much again, Francisco, for your participation today and for your presentation about Spunta and the Corda project. Thanks to everyone here that participated, and I'm sure we're all looking forward to what the year 2021 will bring to this Bitcoin block web series and to the blockchain space and to private DLT networks. So stay tuned. We're looking forward to seeing you next year. And for those that aren't part of the web meetings, which will take place tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, which will concern our positioning on MiCA and the digital euro. So 2 consultations that we are planning to finalize before Christmas. For those who won't be involved in that, already happy Christmas days and happy New Year. And otherwise, see and hear you tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. So
thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Very much. Bye.
Bye.
bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.